So we're going to talk about managing stress at work today, and let's face it, workplace stress can really work on you. I joke about this a little bit. Stress creeps up on you like gaining weight. You don't just wake up one morning and have gotten overweight overnight. Stress works the same way. It's almost like an insidious villain that creeps into your life and starts taking over slowly by slowly. It's death by 1,000 cuts. And we're going to talk about some steps today to be able to, once we realize, and most of you are here today because you realize that you are, or would like to help somebody else that you know very well that is suffering from stress to some degree. And this high level of stress or anxiety, this frustration that comes along with it, it wears on you, it slows you down, it creates situations where you just don't make very good decisions, it slows your energy, it sometimes makes you behave in ways that you wouldn't normally behave. Most people, the majority of people, allow stress and frustration to build up and build up and build up until they explode. And very often when I'm in a live class with a group of people, there's quite a few heads that start nodding when I say that. And it's about 70-something% based on studies that people allow situations to continue to build until it becomes intolerable to them anymore, and they just let it go. And that's not good. That's not how you should be managing situations, of course, that goes without saying. But let's talk today about some of the steps that I've found through the decades, through not only my own personal life and through working with hundreds of other managers, how to get on top of this stress, recognize what's causing that stress, and more importantly, what you need to do to get control of it and take some action to overcome it. Now, spend just a minute. I'm Vaughn Sigmund. I'm one of the co-founders of Results Driven Leadership. I've got two other partners that founded it with me. I'm a multi-decade career executive. I've been in retail most of my life. I now own several businesses. I retired from CarMax a few years back, started this business, and I joined it with Tony Penn, who is a restaurant expert and a leadership expert. He's an amazing guy. He started a lot of chains of restaurants and managed a lot of stress in his life too. My other partner is Danny Lance, who's an MBA engineer. He's the smart guy in the group and worked on FA-18 Hornets, and he's an operational expert. He's a process expert. And between the three of us, we can cover just about any management leadership needs a company needs in the way of training, protocols, and programs. So enough about us. Let's talk about what's causing stress at work. We've got a few folks on, and I'm going to just ask a couple people if you're willing to hit that chat button and share with us on a scale of 1 to 10. What's your level of stress at work? Is it at a level that has facilitated your need to come and join me for an hour or so on this webinar today? So I'm going to give it just a minute and see if you guys have some comments you'd like to score yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 on your level of stress. Yeah. Okay. Chris, thanks for bringing that up. Chris is at an 8. Maeve is probably an 8. Okay. I'm glad you guys are here. We can help with this today. And I'm not sure what your positions are, Chris, Maeve, but let me ask that same question in a very different way. If you're leading teams, if you're working with a lot of peers on projects and goals and that sort of thing, and I'm not going to ask for a response, but I want you to be able to grasp and think about this concept. What level is your department or team operating on a level of stress? And I ask that question for a couple reasons. One, if you're a team leader, if you're a manager, an executive in an organization, you've got to always be cognizant of the fact that your team feeds on you. They feed on your energy, your behaviors. They're always looking to you for guidance. And if you're walking around pegged at an 8 or a 9 on stress all the time, guess what? That's going to rub off on them. That's not a good environment. Maybe some of you are working with somebody that is that boss that's at stress level 8 all the time or constantly. And you may be working for somebody that is unpredictable. You know, I've worked for bosses, and you probably have too. Maybe you're working for them today that they're so high anxiety, so high stress, and you just can't predict their behavior. You have to walk on eggshells around them because you just don't know how they're going to react. And it's a horrible culture to have to work in. And I hope that you guys aren't creating that culture. I'm trusting that you're not. I can tell you from my own experience from decades ago, I did create that culture. I was so driven to succeed that I allowed myself, without some of the elements I'm going to share with you today, to be able to manage it. I was creating a lot of disengagement around me because I was so driven and hard to work for. And once I realized it, and once I started developing some of these techniques I'm going to use with you today, found them, developed them, used them for myself. Nothing that I share in any of my training sessions is not something I've used before. I've utilized it all. I know that it works, or I wouldn't be sharing it with you. And so I'm going to talk about 6 things today that will help you with all that. But it's when we recognize that we're there, when we recognize that we're there, what do I do about it? And that's really the name of the game today. That's the theme today, is giving you the techniques to help it. And you know, we have multiple issues that create stress for us. And let me just run through a few of them that are very common. It's workload. It's a difficult boss. It could be difficult employees. It could be that you're a procrastinator. It could be that you don't manage your time very well. Very often employee issues, HR issues, in the companies that I work with are constant themes where we're taking off our day-to-day or our more important activities because we're having to deal with people issues. May or may not be the case with you, but some of the folks that will watch this will be able to relate to that. And in the end, the theme to all of this is we got to do something about it. We can't live with it. It's not ever going to fix itself. And in the brief time that I have with you today, I'm going to share with you some of the key ways that I've found through the years to be able to manage that. So understand too that there's a cost, a very high cost to workplace stress. It's now there's as I was doing research when I was building this, I was surprised to find that there is actually an American Institute of Stress. So it must be a pretty big business out there, so this whole managing of stress. But this Institute of Stress has done surveys and recognized that it's about a $300 billion issue in the American workplace, which was just an astounding number to me because it's the size of one of the biggest companies on the planet, right? So, but where does it all come from? Well, it comes from absenteeism because stress makes you sick. It makes you sometimes depressed. You don't want to go to work. You can't face it anymore. It creates employee turnover, especially if you're a supervisor that's creating waves in the atmosphere during the course of the day. You're difficult to work for because you're unpredictable. That creates turnover in the workplace. It certainly limits productivity. When people are not fully focused and energized and bought in, not only you personally in getting all your responsibilities done, it affects those around you if you're creating the stress for them too, and they do feed off of that if you do have employees. And then there's direct medical and legal and insurance costs that go along with it. Your workers' comp insurance can go up. You can have one of these blow-ups when you finally reach your stress level and say something or do something that you would normally not do that would create a HR or an employment law lawsuit that come against you. There's a lot of bad things that come from it. I've never been able to identify one single good thing that comes from being highly anxious or stressed at work. It's not only does it affect us personally a lot, it affects us financially as well. So here's some of the strategies I want to talk with you today. Um, I've bookended these a little bit. The very first one is probably one that has the highest level of effect on the most people, and that's being able to manage your time effectively. That lack of time and not being able to stay on top of all your projects and the things that you're working on and getting things done, your goals accomplished, your team's goals accomplished, constantly running behind, having too much work on your plate, or so it seems. That creates a high level of stress. I'm going to give you a couple tips today that I think will help you with that. Having stress reducing attitudes. Sometimes we forget that the only people that make us think or feel very often the way we think or feel are really us. We're in control of our emotions. Only we can control our emotions. Yes, we can be triggered. We can be driven to a level of emotion that is either happy, sad, mad. But we can control that level of that emotion. And if we have the right stress reducing attitudes and recognizing what creates stress for us, when we see it, be able to take the right steps to lower the impact that it has on us and how we react to it, really important. This next one, practicing relaxation techniques, was something I was brought into kicking and screaming through my wife, who is a health coach, and she's a yoga instructor. She's an Ayurveda expert. She's a breast cancer recovery coach. She works with a lot of breast cancer patients, and you can imagine the stress that cancer, maybe some of you guys have even experienced that either yourselves or with a loved one. It's a high stress environment that horrible disease causes, and I'm not going to talk any more about that, but she taught me relaxation techniques that I never thought in a million years would ever work. And by the time I started practicing them, I know they do work. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about those as well. And then the other thing too is being able to focus on what's really important. Let's understand what our priorities are. And I'm going to relay a couple stories to you about how we get misaligned with what our priorities are, what's really important, both in our jobs, our responsibilities, but also in our personal lives, which leads me to the next strategy we're going to talk about is work-life balance. I've actually read articles recently in the past year or so that experts say there's no such thing as a work-life balance, and I call BS on that. There absolutely is a work-life balance. We sometimes lose sight of the priority of that work-life balance, and we need to very much embrace that we need to have a work-life balance because, again, when we've got the right level of pressure and relaxation in our lives, we tend to be much more effective, have a far higher impact on our organizations for what we do if we are in fact balanced in our work and pleasure. And then the last thing, this is the bookend. It's time management on the front end, and then it's being able to spend as little time as possible working on things you're not very good at or you don't like. And that's an important lesson that when I'm working one-on-one in the full course of all this, when I work with folks, we start writing down all the things that they love to do, what they have a natural passion and aptitude for. And then we start writing down all the things that folks do that they're not very good at, but they are forced to do. And it creates stress and it creates frustration, and they're not very good at it, and it takes them longer. And because it takes them longer, they can't get the things that they really love to do done. So we're going to talk a little bit more about some details along those lines. But first, let's talk about time management. And we have a full time management course that we teach. It's one of our most popular courses, as you might imagine. But managing your work time effectively is critical to managing your stress. And I talk about it in both courses when I'm talking about time management. It's being able to get control of your day. And I'm going to tell you just a quick story, and it just happened yesterday. I got a phone call from one of the managers that is in my training, one of my training classes. And she's a young manager, she's a new manager. And she was really upset. She was at that frustration, that stress level that many of us have experienced. I certainly have. That I just can't get everything done. People keep giving me, my CEO gives me stuff, my CFO gives me stuff, marketing gives me stuff, the administrative assistants are giving me stuff. I've got stuff piling on my plate and I can't get everything done, and I feel like I'm disappointing everybody. And I mean, she's just going off. I feel like such a failure. I don't know how to deal with all this. And I said, whoa, stop. Let's talk about this for a minute. And we talked through some time management exercises. And it's one of the techniques I shared with her, because she is getting so much work piled onto her from so many different sources, that she needed to, get them all written down. And I instructed her to create a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet, and list the date that somebody gave her something to do, what it was that person gave her to do, who gave it to her, what it was, the date that somebody gave it to her, and then to always ask, when do you need this by? When do you need this by? Because once you reach capacity, once all these different, let me back up just a second, all these different sources of workload don't know what other sources of workload are giving you. They're oblivious to all that. And so if you're one of these people that are afflicted with this malady that I have, and the inability to say no, and this manager I was talking to yesterday is one of those individuals. She wants to please everybody. I spent my life wanting to please people, and it's difficult for a lot of us to say no when somebody comes to us and say, hey, I need you to do this. We want to be able to help people out. But this tool, this one little process, this step, has been a game changer for so many people. So build a spreadsheet. Who did it? What date they gave it to you? When they want it by? What it is? And then once you reach that capacity and somebody wants to bring you something else, you got to show them the sheet. This could be on a whiteboard. It could be on an Excel file. It could be in your ERP. There's lots of places this sheet can live, but you've got to be able to create this visual. That's the real point to all this. You've got to create a visual that people, when they're bringing you work autonomously, they don't know what everybody else is doing, and they don't know how much is on your plate until you tell them. And once you show them the sheet and say, hey, I want to get this done for you, but here's all the things I've got on my to-do list, and here's who's given me all these things on the to-do list. Where would you like for me to put yours? And if you want yours here, where do you want move? What do you want me to move? Because there's only so many hours in a day, as my old Southernese goes. It's a 50-pound sack you're trying to shove 60 pounds into. I got to offload some of this. So where am I going to get rid of 10 pounds that doesn't fit in the 50-pound sack? And it's a little bold, but it's very necessary. So that if you're one of these individuals that has a lot of people bringing you things to do, please utilize that technique, because it is a game changer. It helps you personally reduce your stress. It also helps others realize how much is being piled on you, so they're less likely to come to you. As long as you say yes, they're going to bring it to you, because you're an easy source of getting work off of their plate and onto your plate. Back to life, just the way it goes. But if you create that visual so they understand that there's a lot going on here and you don't understand what everybody else is giving me, it's not whining, it's not complaining, it's a fact. I've committed, and I've been assigned all these different things. I've got all these projects that I have to get done, and here's when I need to get them done by. What do you want me not to do? And I've used this technique, or taught this technique, with hundreds of managers through the years, and every single one of them come back to me. The ones that use it, not everybody uses it. A lot of people nod their heads, yeah, that's a great idea, I'll never do it. But that's the minority. The majority of people actually embrace this and go into it. They almost within a week or two come back and say, oh my God, that was amazing. Thank you for sharing that idea. because I'm sleeping better at night. I'm less stressed at work. I'm eating better. I'm sleeping better. I'm more relaxed. I'm a better husband, father, mother, whatever, sister, daughter, friend. I'm just better. I'm a better person because I did this. And I don't want to over dramatize that, but it also goes to the next step I want to talk to you about is the concept of managing your time in the ways of called time blocking. So if everything is priority, nothing's a priority. And you certainly have got to be able to understand exactly what your priorities are, what your platinum activities are. And so you've got to be able to time block into your life the items that must be done, those high priority areas. You got to schedule, you got to put it on your calendar. And I don't care whether it's an old handwritten calendar or a wall calendar, a whiteboard, a Google calendar, an Outlook calendar, get it on, schedule it like a doctor's appointment. Don't schedule all at one time. If it's a long-term project, schedule it in bits over time, but get it scheduled. And when it is time for you to get that project, whatever piece of that project you work on, it could be the whole project, it could be just a piece of the project, turn your phone off, shut your email down, and focus just on that project, and focus on it at your most productive time of the day. I'm a morning person. A lot of people are morning people. They can get more done first thing in the morning than they can later in the day. So scheduling and time blocking at a time that you're going to be your most lively and active and creative and energetic is critical to time blocking. But time blocking is one of those ninja moves that so many people have come back to me after they've learned to do it and do it well. It is a complete game changer. And it's, I'm betting a lot of you that are on here today didn't think, well, I didn't know this was a time management seminar, but it's a stress reduction, it's a stress reducer. It absolutely is, because very often what's creating so much stress for us is having too much to do and not enough time. So, and some other little things is wasting time. I'm a people person. I love to talk to others, and I spend more time. Even when I was an executive, you know, I used to have 3,000 employees and run a $2 billion business. I had some stress in my life, believe me. But I wasted a ton of time just wanting to go around and talk to folks. I love talking to people. I love getting information. I love to be able to help them solve problems and that sort of thing. And that kept me from working on some of the bigger projects that I needed to be working on. So I had to be aware that shooting the breeze, having social time with folks was costing me productive time. Meetings. Listen, meetings are, if you're in an organization or even as a leader are creating too many meetings, overscheduling meetings, that's a challenge. Making sure that you're scheduling meetings at the right time of day with the right gap between meetings. More importantly, having the right agenda for those meetings. And that agenda really has to include a time management aspect to it. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more in a minute, but everybody's got to have walkaway commitments from these meetings. We got to know what we're going to do and what we're going to talk about next, what's going to get accomplished. I'll talk more about that in a second. But then, you know, the other thing too is making sure you're not focusing on the wrong activities during the course of the day. That's the priorities that I've talked about. And the last one, this is the nemesis of many business owners, people who have started their own business based on an internal knowledge or experience. And they've started a business. Nobody knows that business better than them. And as they very often have to come to some realization that I can't grow past me if I don't delegate. There's an old saying, I got to delegate to elevate. And it's whether you own a business or you have a career in management, leadership within your organization, the better you are at delegating, the more valuable you'll be as a leader in that organization. And it's not just about giving my work to somebody else. There's a development aspect that goes to delegation. That's the part that gets missed very often, is you've got to invest the time in those around you that you're willing to delegate. You've got to build the trust. You've got to put the training in. You've got to understand that their level of competency is not your level of competency. And of course, they're not going to do it as fast as you can or as thoroughly as you can, because they're just getting started. They're just getting started, and they've got We all learn by doing, and they just do not have the repetitions that you have. And so many leaders, so many managers, business owners get hung up on not delegating because, hey, just do it faster. Or I did it once and they did it all wrong, or they don't do it my way. And that is such a success limiting mind approach, that if you step back and you follow the true process of delegation, which includes patience. Patience is really important in delegation, and time for them to learn to gain that kinesthetic knowledge, that repetition, and become unconsciously competent. There's many things that I do I don't even have to think about. Things like this. I practice very little. I don't have a bunch of notes that I'm looking around because I've done it so many times. And I've lived it, so I've got personal experience. I know about how to manage stress and that sort of thing. But I know how to hire people. I know how to sell cars. I know how to. I know a lot of things about a lot of things, but there's a lot of things that I don't know about, and those are the things I want to find the right people to delegate it to, or it's things that I don't want to do that I want to find the right people to delegate it to. And there's another little point I want to make in this aspect when it comes to delegation is you've got to make sure you're delegating to the right personality type. And someone like me, I don't have a high level of attention to detail. Give me a spreadsheet and a bunch of numbers I have to work my way through, and I'm just horrible at that. I'm frustrated. I just want to get it done. Can I do it? Yes. I am so tired once I get it done, and I hate it the whole time I'm doing it. But there's things in careers and lives and businesses that you just got to do. You got to burn your way through it, and I get that. But if it's something I'm having to do every day that is against my personality type, like if I had to look at numbers and data and figure things out that are very detailed all day long, I would get very stressed out very quickly. So I learned years ago, decades ago, that I have to find folks that are the opposite of me, that in fact can take over those levels of responsibility and do them better than me. I accomplish two things. That's the beauty of delegation. You accomplish multiple things. You're lighting other candles with the area of knowledge. You're getting somebody better at their job. You're investing your time into this person and their development so that they can contribute more to the organization over time. And the second, the most important part of it is I'm getting it off my plate. I don't have to do it anymore. Somebody else's plate, especially if it's something you have no passion or aptitude for, maybe not even the education for. If I can delegate that to somebody else, we get it done faster, better, and enjoy it more than I ever will. So these are just some of the personal habits. The two I stressed, which were time management and time blocking, making sure that you have a to-do list, of course, and if you've got a bunch of folks that are giving you a lot of work to do, that you're keeping a visual, whether it's a whiteboard or an Excel sheet, that once you reach capacity, that you can ask those who are assigning things to you, what you want me to take off, what you want me to move, what you want me to delay. So, important points. I'm going to stop just 1 second. Use that chat button. If anybody has a question about anything I've talked about thus far in time management, let's ask it. So I'll pause just 1 second and see who's got something. I must be doing a heck of a job. Let's talk about the next thing, and it's really important, is having a stress-reducing attitude. So what does all that mean? Like I alluded to earlier in the setup of all this, is we control our thoughts, we control our emotions. We don't always accept that, but we do. I learned to be able to release these things and quit dwelling on things, letting go of the past. I can only change what I'm doing right now and doing tomorrow. I can't change what's happened in the past. And so often we stress ourselves out, get so frustrated with things in the past. We either keep beating ourselves up or dwelling on them to the point where they're always in our minds. They're under our surface. They They sometimes are visiting us when it comes to making decisions. We lose trust in situations or people because of these things that have happened in the past. And yeah, we study history for a reason. It's the best predictor of what the future is going to look like. But if it's an emotional past, and it's something I can't control and I've learned from it, we've got to make sure that we're controlling what we can control, and that I can only change today. I can't change what's happened in the past. So let me just see. Okay, sounds much better now. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. So, and then procrastination, I alluded to this a little bit earlier, but when we are assigned duties and responsibilities that we either don't have time for or we don't really like doing, we tend to procrastinate those things. Or if we don't have proper time management, we don't have proper planning ability, we tend to procrastinate. And listen, some people, I've heard this, and I've had some of my children even say this. I cram before an exam. That's when I'm going to nail it. And okay, that's fine, but God, think about all the stress that goes into all that cramming and getting ready for it. That's just horrible. So when you look at stress, what really makes things work well for you is planning things out. And I'm going to go into more detail about strategy and planning in just a second, which goes hand in hand a little bit with time management. But don't procrastinate. And if you're a procrastinator, and I know how it is, I've never been a procrastinator. Something's got to get done. I get it done. I get it on my calendar and I get it knocked out. If I showed you my calendar right now, you'd see my entire to-do list is on my calendar. I schedule everything. I'm a nut when it comes to that. Not everybody can go to the extreme that I go to, but for the most part, I make sure everything gets done. And am I perfect? Cannot claim that. But I can tell you that I get most, if not the majority of things done on time and done well because I plan it out. And it prevents me from procrastinating. I take it all, I make a lot of notes on things. I keep a handwritten to-do list, but I make sure I get almost everything I do scheduled into my week to get done on the right day and time for me to get it done. And so I schedule my coaching sessions, I schedule my training sessions, I train my administrative time, my business development time. It's all strategically placed on my calendar to be at the time that is best suited for that type of work. Now, I'm my own boss. I've got a lot more freedom than most people have. I get that. But and you probably have a boss or have partners that put things on your plates too. And so that's when you have to collaborate a little bit to make sure that the timelines, the time of day, when things work, even for meetings, just write things down, put dates to them. We're going to talk more about that in just a second. But make sure that you that if you're a procrastinator, there's ways to get around it. Use your calendar, use your time management, plan things out. So relaxation techniques. And again, I talked about this earlier. My lovely wife taught me how to do this. And I used to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and not be able to go back to sleep. I used to have to take Ambien to go to sleep, or CBD or something else to go to sleep. And I don't have to do that anymore. She taught me, and I actually embrace the ability to have breathing exercises. And it's a whole industry to learn how to breathe. And it's becoming a very large business. Is a burgeoning growth in the health field, is teaching people how to breathe, which is unbelievable. But it's amazing when you really learn the proper techniques for breathing, visualization, being able to take some time and meditate, be alone, think through things. You've got to schedule that alone time for yourself to clear your mind, to clear your thoughts, and to be able to really picture in on something that's going to blank your mind out and go through a little bit of a reset. It's like resetting your smartphone. We need that on a regular basis as humans too. We got to go through a reset. And if it's not daily, it's got to be on a regular basis. And if you don't have these kind of practices built into your day, again, that's when stress builds and builds and builds. And it becomes that villainous threat that comes into our lives. And you got to be really careful because, again, it doesn't just show up one day, it builds over time. And then all of a sudden something happens that you recognize that stress is there. And as you feel it coming on, take the time to learn some visualization and meditation exercises. If you'd asked me 10 years ago if I'd ever be somebody that would be teaching and embracing this, I'd tell you you're out of your mind. But I got to tell you, I have and I do. And it works so well that I've included it in this course and make sure I try to stress it with everybody's. And the other part too is a guided visualization. And making sure that it's a process to visualization and having somebody guide you through that visualization to take your mind along the steps, the journey to peace and serenity and success in the end. So I'm running a little short on time and I want to move on to this next one, but let's talk about the workplace strategy. So it's, back when I was running a big company, I hated strategic plans. I hated them because they were a ton of work. They were all consuming. I really felt like very often the strategic plans were being created just to fill out a piece of paper and so that some bureaucrat could claim that it was done. But I got to tell you, once I got into the private business world and understood that strategies for either small companies or even individuals, even teams, the value if they are applied properly. And it works just like I want to share with you right now is identify work-related goals. What do we want to accomplish? What do you want to accomplish? And who are the individuals you work with that can help you get it accomplished? Now, it may be just you, and I get that. It may be you and a team, and I get that. Maybe you running an entire company, and that's another strategic plan. But the elements of the strategic plan really look like this. Whether it's your own personal goal, a team goal, or a company goal, is you've got to create the strategies, the steps, the action plans to get there. So I've set a goal, and let me just give you an example. Let's say where I'm going to increase sales by 20%, or I'm going to reduce turnover by 50%, or I'm going to have $10,000 in the bank by the end of the year, or I'm going to pay off my student loans, or I'm going to save money to buy a car. It could be any kind of goal, personal or professional. Write it down, get it in writing, put it on a piece of paper, put it up somewhere, make it visual. It's amazing the difference. And there's actually been studies on this, that goals that get written down are 80% more likely to get accomplished than goals that just reside in somebody's head. So there's some science behind writing down your goals. Put your goal in writing, whether it's your own personal goal, a business goal, a team goal, company goal, whatever it is, get it in writing. And then more importantly, the next step of a strategy is, okay, what have I got to do to accomplish that goal? What are the steps that I've got to take? Are they daily steps, weekly steps? What are the tactics that I have to approach in order to accomplish it? I've got to break it down into little steps to get there. And there's an old saying in business, but it's absolutely true, that a goal without a strategy or without a plan is just a wish. And what I'm sharing with you now is that strategy. Write down the goal, then write down all the steps. And if you're collaborating with a team, the more input you can get from more people and how to accomplish that goal is going to be a huge game changer in your ability to achieve that goal. And let's talk about improving sales as just an example. One of the things I might have to look at if I want to increase sales by 20% by the end of the year, And I've got to be specific about that. It's got to have a timeline. I'm going to talk about SMART goals in just a minute. So what are some of the steps I have to take in order to accomplish that 20% increase? Is it I need to introduce new products, new services? Do I need to reprice it? Do I need to hire new salespeople? Do I need to take a different sales approach? Do I need to take sales training? Do I need to take business development training? If I want to learn to use Excel, I want to become an expert on Excel by the end of the year. Well, what have I got to do? I'm going to be an Excel expert by January 2021. What have I got to do? Well, I'm going to watch some YouTube videos. I'm going to take some online classes. I'm going to practice it on a weekly basis, my new skills. I'm going to find some reason to learn how to use a pivot table or how to data validation in an Excel spreadsheet. And I've got to find ways to practice it in order to get better at it. It's a personal goal, business goal. There's steps that you may have to collaborate on. There's things that sometimes you personally have to be able to figure out or determine. But anytime you can get more than one opinion or more than one person, even if it's a personal goal, find a Facebook group, find a community, talk to them about how they've accomplished it. Anytime you can collaborate with others, either on a business goal or a personal goal, is such an improvement in just what you know. You don't know what you don't know. Others have been there. Others have experienced it. Others have different viewpoints or approaches to things. Use the wisdom of others, the experiences of others to help you achieve your goals. And it's amazing how much faster, it's not amazing, it's just a fact, it just works better this way, that you will find that you are achieving things that you've been either procrastinating or not be able to achieve in the past. When you start putting things into bite-sized pieces, step-by-step approach, keep them in writing, make sure everything's in writing, go back understanding that your strategic plan or your plan to accomplish whatever is going to have to be changed from time to time. Not everything's going to work. No plan is ever perfect. Be willing to change those. But the two key elements, I'm going to say one last time, then we're going to move on. Write it down and collaborate. Find others who can help you with the strategies, the tactics, the approaches. The last point I want to make on it, all goals have to be in SMART format. And most of you probably heard what a SMART format is, but just in case there's somebody here that is not aware of SMART, it's an acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, the person responsible for, and the last and the single most important element of a SMART goal is time bound, and what time is it going to get done. So I talked about a couple earlier, so let's talk just about, I'm going to increase sales by 20% by the end of the year. It's specific. I'm going to increase my sales by 20%. Is that measurable? Yep. Is it achievable? Well, yeah, probably. Who's the person responsible? Well, we're going to have to figure that out. It's either going to be me or somebody on my sales team, or my entire sales team is going to have to do it. But most importantly, I'm going to do it by January 2021. I've got to put a date that it's going to get achieved. That's the one point, that's the one element that gets left out of goal achievement. So many people put a loosey-goosey or just kind of a ambiguous kind of expectation as to when this is going to get accomplished. And rarely does it get accomplished in that timeline if there's not a timeline. So put an end date. Doesn't mean you can't push that end date out. Doesn't mean you can't get it accomplished sooner. But have an end date. Circle a date on a calendar that you're going to get that goal accomplished. Again, I'm going to pause just 1 second to see if anybody has any questions. Use that chat button if you will. All right. Very good. So let's talk about work-life balance at this point. we've got to have some pleasure in our lives. We don't have to, but let me tell you, it makes for a better life when we have friends and family and activities and hobbies. And when those things start getting taken away from us because we're stressed out and we have too much work to do, it starts eroding our ability to manage a successful life. And if somehow you allowed the situation to occur, that you've had hobbies in the past, whether it may have been a sport or could have been collecting things or knitting or surfing or cycling or running or charity. It could be church. It could be a lot of different things that brought you pleasure in life. But because of your work or your the workload that you have, there's a lot of stress being created today because many parents are having to become teachers. We've got a whole nother level of activity that's come into our lives. We can't send our kids off to school. With the pandemic has created these new normals that we're having to face, and just change alone creates a high level of stress. We as humans are not real adapt to change, and we like things the way they've been. And unfortunately, we stay in bad relationships, we stay in bad jobs, we stay in bad situations because of our human nature that has a displeasure around change. And when we're having to change, it creates stress. And let me tell you, for those of you who are on this today and you're a parent and you've got all of a sudden this new responsibility of having to maintain a classroom in your house, all of a sudden, that's tough. Get back to a strategy. But back to work-life balance. You've got to schedule the time. You've got to make the time. You've got to look at all your activities, write them down. And when I say activities, work-related activities, write them down. And what are your must-haves? What are your nice-to-haves? What are your, I can give it up and I'm not going to get fired? What are those kind of activities that you're doing? And schedule your life. And I can't believe we even have to talk about that today, but in many cases, if you've got such a level of responsibility and workload that you have to actually schedule your life, your enjoyment in life. Many of us work weekends in order to stay caught up on work and emails and projects and that sort of thing. That's really unfortunate. And yeah, that needs to be temporary. It can't be permanent, but as long as we allow it to become more and more permanent, it's going to be there until we say stop. And so even if it's some activity that you personally want to enjoy, it's yoga or some form of exercise, put it on your calendar, schedule it, work other things around it. Make sure your life, your pleasure, going out to dinner, having fun with friends, blocking your weekends, even if you have to work a little bit on the weekends, schedule that time outside of the time that you have to spend on work to go have some fun. Don't lose sight of that, because it just makes you for a more balanced individual if you're doing that. And the last point I have on here is we have so many stimulations in our life. We are constantly connected to the world. We're constantly connected to either social media or entertainment opportunities or text or phone calls. There was a time that was much more simpler before the smartphone that we were allowed, and it was far easier to achieve some alone time. And going back to even having some of these stress reducing exercises or activities, you got to schedule a little downtime, folks. You do. And being alone is okay. But if you're constantly stimulated and responsible and having to be with people all day, every day, even when you're at home, you've got to let everybody know that between this hour and this hour, whether it's when I first get up in the morning or after everybody goes to bed at night, you got to go have some me time. It's just so healthy for you. It helps you manage your stress in ways that, and if you're not doing it, you can't imagine what an impact it has for you. So please, I encourage you, and make time for family, make time for friends, make time for your hobbies, but more importantly, make time for you. And we very often, we make ourselves the lowest of priorities when it comes to the hierarchy of life. And schedule yourself up that level of hierarchy. Take care of yourself. Have a little fun. And if some of that stuff for work or other activities don't get done, they don't get done. You got to be able to release that. Take care of yourself. Schedule time for you. So the last thing I want to talk about today is recognizing what you have a passion and aptitude for. And I alluded to this earlier in the presentation, but understand we sometimes take on duties and roles and responsibilities that we're not cut out for. We have a behavioral pattern, a personality pattern that is more fitting to some activities, responsibilities more than others. And if you as an individual, like I talked about earlier, I'm not a detail guy. But if I'm having to do detail all day long, it stresses me out. It wears me out. I am not very good at all the other things I'm very good at because I've that activity I've had to do that I'm not very good at has sucked that energy out of me. So you've got to identify if you've got activities that you're responsible for. Could be at home as well, but where really this is more about workplace stress. You got activities at work that you don't have a passion or an aptitude for, that you're not very good at, maybe you're not educated to do, and you're having to work so hard to get it done. You get it done, but it takes a lot of energy to get that done. Let's identify those, and let's see what you can do to minimize the time spent on those. It comes back to delegation sometimes. Sometimes it takes your ability to schedule these things. If you can't get rid of it, and sometimes we're in that reality that I've just got to do it. I've got to suck it up and do it. Like every month when I have to do my P&L, my accountant sends it over to me, but I learned a long time ago I got to pay attention to my numbers. I've got to take time and understand where I am financially, budget-wise, financially, income, expenses. I hate it, but I got to do it. I just as soon ignore it, but I got to do it. And I hate doing it the whole time I do it, but it's one of those things I've got to do. And you probably have things at work that are along those lines. So here's one of the things that hardly anybody, and let's go back to procrastination for a minute, is if you're a boss, if you're a leader, and you've got an employee that's causing you some challenges, causing you stress, we tend to procrastinate having the difficult conversations. And this is all part of another dealing with difficult people training class that I have, but you can't procrastinate these difficult conversations. Nobody's good at having those. Nobody looks forward to confrontation. Nobody has a need in their lives to go be telling people bad news or correcting people or giving people a lot of feedback all the time or telling people they suck at what they do. But understand that if you're not good at it, if it creates too much stress for you, you might want to find a partner to help you with those sort of things. You can't always eliminate it, but what can you do to minimize it? How can you do less of it? How can you do less of it? Is that getting a partner? Is it delegating it to somebody else? Is it training somebody to do it for you? What is it? Find somebody else that can take some of that load off of you. And even if it's one thing or two things or three things, it's a math equation at that point. There's that much percent less in your life that's creating stress for you. And no matter what, if you're, and again, I'm going to go back to my own personal life, this is the one I know the best. I've got to accept that I'm never going to get good at detail. I had to learn that long ago. I'm never going to be good at it because it's not baked into me. We're baked in, the things we're good at and we're passionate about, and we have an aptitude for, is either God-given, baked into us, or we're not. It's real black and white when it comes to that. That's my opinion. And so you've got to be real aware of what you're good at, what you love doing, And if you're having to do things that you're not very good at and you don't enjoy doing, try to minimize those. Do whatever you can to minimize those. So let me pause one more time before we go into a quick little exercise that I'm gonna send over to everybody. I think I've already sent it out to everybody, but for sure right after this webinar, you're going to get the sheet that's about to come up on the screen. But I want to pause just 1 second. I've covered a lot of material with you guys today. What questions might you have? Use that chat button. Does anybody have a situation, a scenario that you'd like to share with us? And unmute yourself. Let's bring you up to talk about it, or you can use that chat button if you'd like to type it out, and we can take a look at it and see if I can help you with it. So I'll give you just a couple minutes. Let me know. Love it. All right. Nobody's typed anything in. Fantastic. So I'm going to go over to the exercise. This is creating a stress-reducing attitude exercise. And again, we're not going to go through this together. If you were in my live class and we're spending the full 2 hours and going through the full Monty on all this, we would all be doing this exercise right now, but I've sent it over to you. And I encourage you all to take yourselves through this exercise. Hold on, I think I got a question here. You know what? I tell you what I'll do, Teresa. I've got your email address. I will send you my wife. One of my wife's partners is a breathing expert. She has a website, and she teaches breathing exercises and training. She's got a free course, and she's got a pay for course. It's one of the most popular things my wife talks about on her podcast, and she has a wildly popular podcast. I'm so jealous of her, but I will send that link over to you, to her breathing expert. Be happy to do that. And if anybody else wants that link, let me know, because she is amazing. So I'll send that over to you, Teresa, as soon as we're off of here. I don't have it handy. I'd give it to you right now. Maeve wants one too. Okay. You'll love it. I'm just making a note so I don't forget it. All right. So, and you're very welcome. I'm glad to be able to do it. Let's look at some of these exercises real quick, and I'm just going to go over them and talk about how to make this work best for you. So on a scale of 1 to 5, what is your ability? What today is your personal ability to be able to accept that I can only change the things that's within my control? And that's a big one. That's a big one because it creates a lot of frustration for a lot of people. But if we have the mindset that we recognize these situations that we have zero control over, it tends to reduce a lot of stress for us. So I've got some examples on here, but the key to all this, and again, I'm big on writing stuff down, as you can clearly see, but in 3 statements, write down some things that you've learned that will help you implement or improve this attitude. The second one on here is proactively change things that are within my control. What can I control? Oh, hold on. Chris has got a little more information here. I'm going to pause and just read through this, Chris. I work in an industry where we expect to be available, oh, I'm so sorry, almost 24/7 for clients in order to get ahead. It just doesn't work for me and my family, including 4 children. And a FIFO husband. I'm not sure what that means, but I'd love to say I'm unavailable, say after 6 p.m., and only for a few hours on the weekend without feeling guilty to my employer. Okay. And so that's one of those things that I'm not, fly in, fly out. It works well. Oh my gosh, I did that to my wife for years. I traveled for 20 years. I get you. And with 4 kids, wow, that's a lot of pressure, Chris. And so Chris, it's it's an is it an expectation in writing, or is it an expectation by tribal knowledge? That's just how we're expected. Are you graded? Are you judged? Are you reviewed on your ability to react to customers 24/7? And if you want to turn on your mic and ask me this live, that's fine too, or you can type it out, Chris, whichever way you want to do it. So let me know if it's a written expectation, because that's one thing that we have to talk about, or is it just a tribal expectation that was just expected, but it's not in writing?
Hi, thanks, Vaughan. Yeah, look, it's a tribal expectation. It's not in writing, but it is very much expected, and you are called out publicly in meetings if you're seen to not be conforming, I guess. Yeah.
And I'm so sorry to hear you're in that situation. My first reaction is, Chris, that's a very difficult job. And it's a very difficult, if not impossible, expectation to be set on you, especially in the current situation. So, um, it does it show up on your, and you said you're called out if you're not doing it. So if do you have assigned clients, people who are just your clients, or is it like a call center situation, not to diminish what you're doing, where it's going to rotate through a number of phone calls for somebody to answer the phone? Is it just your clients, or is it any client can call anybody?
No, it's just my clients. Yep.
Ah, okay. And how often does that happen, Chris? Over the weekends or nights?
Oh, when you're contacted by clients, it's continuous. So much like your wife, I'm a health coach. So
Ah,
it is constantly people contacting you 24/7, all hours of the day and night, and then your team as well on top of that. And obviously, our employers can see our figures, and if you're not performing to how they feel you are, as in your clients and turnover and your KPIs aren't being met, then yeah, they're very vocal about letting you know that you're not pulling your weight. So that's, I guess I'm just asking here is, I guess I'm asking for permission to say no, I guess, because much like the girl you were speaking about, I'm a yes person, and it's taken its toll. So
yeah,
yeah.
Chris, and I got to tell you, it's that's one of those situations where it sounds like the expectations of your employer. And gosh, I hate to say this, but I'm going to say it. I tell people, when you ask me a question, you're going to get an honest answer. I'm sure you would love working with your clients. I'm sure you enjoy the help that you provide them, the guidance that you provide them. But at some point, well, let me just back up before I stick my foot into it any further. Chris, how many other people work for your company in the same role, and do they all share the same frustration with this?
I would say that a lot more share the same frustration, but are too, well, they've privately let me know that they share the same concerns and the same frustrations, but they won't openly say anything because they see the repercussions from speaking out. So um, yeah, it's not a nice culture to be in. And I'm at the point where I said to you, my stress levels are 8, tossing up as to whether this is a job I really need. Like, do I need to find something else? So like you said, I do love helping my clients. I get great enjoyment out of that. That is such a rewarding job to be in. It's just the management that I work under that I struggle with. So, and that culture.
Yeah, Chris, my first reaction, and based on my experience hearing what is a very difficult situation, it sounds like a situation that I would try to start finding an exit from. And knowing what I know about the coaching industry is, and I'm sure you're very, very knowledgeable of it. There's a very, you could have a very successful lifestyle business with your knowledge, your experience, your education in health coaching, um, without your employer. You can be self-employed and have a very nice living doing this. Does it take time to build that? Yes. Are there other companies out there that you could work for? Maybe, probably. But it's, if it is creating the level of stress that I gather it's creating for you, especially in the situation that your life is in, I don't see how you do it. And many people, when they reach a certain point in their life, whether it's age or stress, life's short, Chris. Life's short. And if it's taken away from your effectiveness as a mother or a wife or a friend, you're way better off. And this is just with 5 seconds of knowledge of the situation. And if you'd like to talk further, I'd be more than happy to talk one-on-one with you. I'd be thrilled to be able to do that. Sounds like we need to put a strategy in place to find something else that's more suitable from a job expectation standpoint. Maeve's got some stuff in there, some healthy boundaries. And you may be surprised, but clients can be trained to respect that you're a person and not a machine. Set up email, work phone, with a reasonable time frame to respond so that you manage expectations and nicely create a boundary. And yes, that's really, really, really good idea. So I can tell you, Chris, and my wife in her own business, if somebody tries to contact her, and she's got clients all over the world, like I'm sure you do too. She's got clients that are going through very difficult situations in their life. They just need somebody to talk to. And my wife is the easiest person in the world to talk to. And so they start abusing that. They don't realize it. They're just trying to help themselves, but they're abusing at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning and they may be in Australia or Israel or someplace, and they need to talk to their health coach. And she too has had to do exactly what Maeve has said, is set those boundaries. We're going to talk about it, but I can't do this every night. Can this be an exception from time to time? You bet. But the thing that I'm concerned with is, you said that you get called out and your employer holds you accountable to it. If it's the kind of organization that has a bunch of people who are not willing to voice their opinions about how untenable this is, then you probably need to find something else or go do something on your own. That's doable. Financially, could create a whole nother level of stress, however. And again, I'd have to have more information that I'm sure you don't want to share with me today in front of all these folks. But if you can't go talk to your boss and say, boss, how can you expect us to do this 24/7? Your boss be reasonable enough to say, okay, you called me out on it. Let's set a schedule. Let's have an on-call list. Let's set some boundaries, like Mavis said, for when they can and can't call based on where they're situated in the world. Or let's create a online calendar that they can schedule a time for you to get back to them. There's certainly software solutions to this, but only if your employer is willing to accept it. And I got to tell you, in managing clients and customers for decades, I think most of them love to be able to get instant connections and responses, but I think the majority of people are reasonable enough to understand that people have lives, and that that they need to go about those lives. But if I can't do this, but you can do this, if they have options, that's the point I'm trying to make, not very well. If I have options, I can't talk to you now, but I can talk to you at 6 o'clock, or I can talk to you at 9 o'clock. As long as they know that in writing and somebody's responded to them, and software can respond automatically, that this is going to come back, that I'm going to get back to you at a certain day and time, they tend to be very satisfied with that. So that may be another option that you could suggest to your employer if you haven't already done so. Does that help at all, Chris? Okay.
Yeah, yes. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you very much for that, Morv. That's appreciated.
All right. Very good. So um, I'm just going to quickly go through the remainder of these just for a second. Um, Change things that are in or not in my control. Develop and use routines is another thing I didn't cover today, but I got to tell you, if you have a routine, it tends to reduce stress in your life. Procrastination is another thing that we talked about. Where do you rank yourself, and what can you do differently based on some of the things I've shared with you today, or even some new awareness that may have been precipitated from this conversation today, to help you with recognizing that you do tend to procrastinate and how you can get better at it. And then another thing too is how do I continue to learn? How do I continue to get better at things? Sometimes we can reduce stress by just being more educated on some of the things that are creating stress for us. Becoming more competent at things can reduce stress. So those are some of the examples. We sent all these out to you, and I encourage you all to go through and put the thought into some of the things that you can control to help you reduce that stress. So in conclusion here today, this was just a sample of one of the 24 modules out of my high impact manager training program. Falls into 4 quadrants. We have 6 that are around acquiring and developing talent. We have another 6 modules around influencing others positively. We've got another 6 around self-development, and the final group is all around team performance. It's something we've taught with thousands of managers, with hundreds and hundreds of companies. Here's some of the companies we have worked with. This is a very short list of the companies we've worked with. If you recognize any of these companies, it's you got manufacturing, you got software, you've got lifestyle, you got real estate, you got restaurants, you got professional services. At the end of the day, managing people is managing people regardless of the industry that you're in. And if you want any more information on some of our training offers and services, I'd love to talk to you. Here's my email address, vaughn@rdltraining.com. And again, we've been doing this training for decades. We've done it with hundreds of companies. And like I also said, 90% of the challenges are, we tend to want to believe that our challenges are industry specific, but having worked with almost every type of industry through the years, they're all essentially the same. We may just call them different things. Another nice thing about what we do is all of our trainers, and we have 18 right now, they're all former executives. These aren't people that get hired out of college, get trained up on a program, and go out and train. Now, these are folks that have been frontline executive managers that led teams. They've got the bruises and the scars. They've got the in the trenches experience. So that brings an element to the training that other organizations cannot provide anyone. We can provide our training either in person or virtually. And we utilize all the modern, most effective learning approaches. So if you're interested in more information, I'd be more than happy to share all that with you guys. Just please reach out to me via email. I'd love to be able to talk to you further about that. Or even if you're not the decision maker in your organization, you feel like your organization might be able to benefit from something like that you went through today. And thank you, Mae, for the kind words. Thank you all very much. And I would love to be able to help you all in the future. You're all on the mailing list now. We do one of these about once a month. Please come and join us. Thank you again, Chris. And if you 2:30 a.m. You're a beast, Chris. Waking up at 2:30 in the morning to do this. Thank you so much for doing it. I hope it was worth it. And if you guys have any questions, any needs in the future, please reach out. It's what I do. I love doing it. I'll be able to help you in any way I can.